So, today we are going to discuss the opposite end of the pregnancy training spectrum, and that's when you or your client is like athletic. You're training a lot, you're training every day, or you're training endurance, say for marathon or half marathon, or you're lifting heavy loads. Um, this kind of client or person will need to keep exercising, keep training. And they're also the ones for which the advice, listen to your body, is really difficult sort of conceptually. So in my case, if a doctor told me to listen to my body and I felt tired, for example, I'd be like, am I tired or do I just not feel like exercising? And if I just don't feel like it, then I'm being lazy. And I would really push myself to keep going, keep trying, try harder, keep lifting, because I didn't trust my body. I didn't trust my perceptions of my body as real. I felt like I was tired or I was moody or I didn't feel like it, and that was just me being tired and moody, and I should be exercising anyway. I was very judgmental and very hard on myself. And the idea of listening to your body is quite difficult because you're going under this massive metamorphosis. What are we listening for? Are we listening for fatigue, mood changes, aches and pains, or are we listening or for specific symptoms, right? We need to be more specific with our athletic clients, in regards to what are they listening for when it comes to their training during pregnancy. And here's the thing too, like a pregnant client who's athletic should not necessarily continue doing what they've always done. They do need to bring it back and moderate it a little. But how and in what manner will change from client to client. So that's where your guidance is really key, and you getting educated in this is really key, because they'll get to a point where they're feeling amazing in their second trimester, but you have to make the decision, do I really want to put extra stretch on her abdominal separation right now? And do I really want to bounce up and down on her pelvic floor any more than what's already being stretched or bounced up and down on just with the pregnancy alone? And usually and hopefully the answer is no. But it's a line, right? Because your athletic client is not going to be happy sitting on the floor and doing breathing exercises. So what you've got to understand is, in university age athletes that have not got any children, rates of stress incontinence are more than double and close to triple the rates of stress incontinence in general populations, including mums. So her athleticism, especially if her athleticism resembles things like trampolining, gymnastics, or track and field events, including running, if her athleticism looks like that, she's already going to have a compromised core. And this is going to be something you need to moderate as her pregnancy progresses, because the bigger she gets, the more downward, outward, and upward pressure, the more her insides are rearranged. And if she's got really strong abs like I did, the more intra-abdominal pressure she can generate, which further pushes organs and babies and amniotic fluid down, up and out, right? So she may continue training as she's always done in her first trimester, but ultimately you've got to weigh up the risks. So the first trimester is also the time where her risk of miscarriage is at its highest. So depending on where you read your stats, anywhere between 30 to 66% of all pregnancies will end in miscarriage. And you don't really want that happening on your gym floor, and you don't want it associated with the activities you chose during her first trimester. And that's not something to panic about either. It's very unlikely the exercise you've given her is going to cause a miscarriage, but the association can create fear, anxiety where there doesn't need to be any. And the rate of cell multiplication going on in her body at that present time means you can afford to scale it back a bit and be just a bit conservative. Just take the edge off, because there's a lot going on in her body already. Like You just don't have to go there, so why would you go there? The other thing I want you to think about with your athletic client is, and this is not advice for athletes training for a sport. This is advice for athletic general populations. Is consider what she's training for. So if you've got to back off your intensity a little bit, maybe you're not doing box jumps anymore, but what are you training for? You're training for motherhood, and motherhood has a bunch of repetitive movements, strength based movements, deadlifts, housework based movements. Like, when has this woman ever lifted 3.5 kilos all day before? So, you can really replace that with sports specific movements that will train her for the task of motherhood, making her like a superhuman or super fit at those movements, which is obviously going to ease her into that transition and ultimately be more meaningful than continuing to do box jumps and double unders and burpees all throughout her pregnancy. So her training doesn't necessarily have to be gentle and easy. We don't have to, that 140 beats per minute heart rate that used to be recommended has been abolished like 30 years ago, and it was never based in science. But what we do have to do is manage the risks and understand the changes that are occurring to her physically. She's not the same body she was before. And then we have to manage those risks with her goals, what we're training for, her lifestyle, and then just maybe educate her and appreciate that just taking the edge off the volume, the intensity, the complexity, the loads, will ultimately walk that middle line of moderation, which will give you the best bang for buck. And we'll go into that next week. The best results with the least amount of risk is moderation. So feel free to send me your questions. I always read them. And next week we're off on a big adventure, so I'll be sending a pre-recorded video. But still send me your questions. I'll be reading them.